Dear friends, good morning and loving greetings to all of you. It is a real pleasure to welcome you once again to our online course of the ISSE-SE Education in Human Values program. It has been almost 2 years that we meet regularly to walk together on this fascinating path, which reveals the light within our hearts, manifested as the beauty of the 5 human values: truth, righteousness, peace, love, and non-violence. We have covered so far, you remember we started February 2021, and we have covered 2 modules of the course 1, Module 1 and Module 2. And now, during this academic year, we move forward with Module 3. And today, we will have the 5th session of Module 3, which is actually a continuation of our last session that was presented before 2 weeks on the topic of the 5 human values and local culture. Our dear Esther Chris, as you very well remember, took us through a wonderful journey showing us the beautiful values contained in the local culture of Colombia. And she invited us to also find and reflect upon the values present in our own local cultures. Through today's session, we will have the chance to delve deeper on this important topic. And it is my great pleasure to invite for that Suzanne Carenini Palemo, the Vice Director of our Institute, who will take us through another fascinating journey filled with inspiration, creativity, spiritual nourishment, and most importantly, full of light. So, good morning and welcome, dear Suzanne.
Good morning, George. How are you today?
Very well.
I'm very happy to be back.
Yes, we're also very happy and we're looking forward. We know all the time is a joy to hear you and to share with you your insightful sharing.
Thank you.
Before starting, so maybe it is meaningful to mention, dear Suzanne, and to remind to everybody that Suzanne is the co-founder of the open space Arte e Valori. It's a very beautiful place in the Canton Ticino in Giubiasco. And I have visited, I had the chance to visit and also to stay for a couple of days there, where Suzanne and her husband, Kino, organize free exhibitions, cultural meetings, and human values workshops, to which all are welcome, from art lovers to children. So she has really a very rich experience, and she has done a lot on the local culture, because this is really a very beautiful way to approach the human values and to share them with our friends and neighbors, relatives. So today we're looking forward to hear what will come from the local culture of Switzerland or maybe Italy, because I have to say that Suzanne has a double origin. I think you're born in US, huh?
Yes, but, I was born in the States.
But you are you have an Italian origin.
Yes, yes. My father was Italian.
Okay, and your mother, it was
American, yes.
American. Okay.
But I lived over 24 years in Italy.
Okay, yes, yes. Okay, so we're looking forward there, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, dear George. And hello, everyone. I'm really, really happy. It's a joy for me to be back with you today and to share some inspiration with you, and something definitely relevant in the context of today's session, the 5 human values and local culture. So just allow me 1 minute to share my screen with you. Think you all see my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
dear
Suzanne. Yes, Suzanne.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank
Very
you.
well. Thank you.
So we are just before beginning, I thought of mentioning one word about culture to you. It's a word that it kept coming to me over and over while I was preparing this presentation. And the word is nourishment. I just realized how true culture is nourishment for us. It nourishes our mind, our hearts, and our souls. And that this nourishment, if you try to bring it together, is beauty. And this beauty truly touches our mind, our heart, and our soul. And we know that beauty is connected. It walks hand in hand with truth and with goodness. So true culture actually calls upon beauty, truth, and goodness that are inherent within us. And then I realized that true culture is nothing but educare. That actually calls upon the values, the seeds of the values that we know reside in our hearts. Helps us develop our full potential and express this in our lives as we cultivate these seeds during our lives. So today, we will continue our journey through the 5 human values and local culture. And 2 weeks ago, you know, it was wonderful to be with Esther Cris because we had a lovely journey to Colombia. And today we will be journeying, we will be traveling to Italy, as George actually anticipated. And we will be nourished today by he who is known as the supreme poet. And we will explore what is considered not only as a milestone in Italian culture, but as a landmark, a milestone in human culture. And as you see on the right of this slide, this beautiful staircase, spiral staircase going upwards, we see some characters, some people, some souls that are walking up the staircase, but some of them are also walking down. So today we will travel through an extraordinary metaphor of this path. It's a path that is moving upward, mostly upward, and we will be moving upward. It is a true path of illumination. So before I continue, I would like to stress that I am absolutely no authority to talk to you about Dante Alighieri and his Divine Comedy. But 3 years ago by now, in our open space, we decided to dedicate the whole year of 2021 to Dante Alighieri and his Divine Comedy. My husband is passionate about Dante. He has a wonderful collection of books, and he really reads all the commentaries every single day. He studies Dante. So 2021 was a very important event. It was the celebration worldwide of the 700th year of Dante's death. And as said, this was celebrated all over the world with very many, very, very important cultural events. So we very humbly decided to dedicate our open space to Dante, and we actually began 1 year before, in 2020. And we began by having a series of public meetings dedicated to Dante, so we could be prepared for 2021. And during 2021, we had 2 exhibitions, again, a few public meetings, less due to COVID, and we're able also to publish a series of articles dedicated to Dante. So I'm saying this because these past years have represented for me a wonderful opportunity to delve deep into the teachings of Dante, into the Divine Comedy, and explore this path of illumination. So I'm very happy today to be here with you to share something of my findings with you. Well, first of all, we know that culture definitely manifests through the arts. And the Divine Comedy nourishes us We have said that culture is nourishment for our soul, for our heart, for our mind. And he does so through the art of literature and poetry, and also the figurative arts. Because since Dante wrote this in the Middle Ages, artists of his time, Giotto, and after that in the Renaissance, Sandro Botticelli, and then from then onwards till today, have interpreted the outstanding masterpiece of the Divine Comedy. And we will see how the path that we will follow today is systemic. It embraces our whole being. And as we walk through this path, as we explore this path together with Dante, we will see how it helps us build awareness. And we will also see how it leads us to what we can define as a total conversion. And when we have a chance in a short while to look at Dante's universe, we will understand why we use the word conversion. Now, like all masterpieces, the Divine Comedy is universal. It speaks a universal language which reaches the heart of the reader. And as it does, it inspires and offers guidance. And this was true in Dante's times, and it is still true today. Now, during Dante's times, 52 years after the death of the poet, actually the people of Florence, Dante was from Florence, he was born in Florence, went to the priors of Florence, the people who were governing Florence, with a petition. And they actually pleaded the priors to find a capable man, a man or someone wise enough to read them Dante's book, as they referred to it at the time. They begged them to find someone who was capable, who had the wisdom to explain it to them. And because they said, actually, in their petition, they said the people of Florence want, both for oneself and for other citizens, to aspire to virtue. We want to be instructed in Dante's book to avoid falling into vices. We want to acquire virtues as well as the art of eloquence. And the priors of Florence grant this wish, this desire, and they actually give the task to another very famous writer, Italian writer, whose name is Giovanni Boccaccio. And actually it was Giovanni Boccaccio who called the Divine Comedy divine, because up till that moment it was only referred to as Dante's book or the comedy. And on the 9th of August, 1373, we could call them today workshops. Workshops began in a church in Florence to instruct people on the Divine Comedy. And when I read this, when I found this out, I thought, oh, how wonderful it would be today if the people of our world could sign a petition pleading to learn virtues. But the Divine Comedy, as we said, is still alive today. And I'm using this beautiful painting by Pablo Picasso to remind myself to mention something personal. I have a nephew who is 9 years old and he lives in Rome, and he has a dog. And my nephew's name is Sammy, while his dog's name is Dante. So I recently visited him and asked him, why did you name your dog Dante? And he told me, well, my dog has a long nose. So those of you who may know Dante or have seen his profile in paintings, which is here, he is known for his very prominent nose. And then I asked him, but do you know who Dante was? And he said, of course. And I said, well, you know, your Uncle Kino is so passionate about Dante. Would you like to record something you know so we can send it to him? He'd be so happy. So the next day we sat down together, and this little 9-year-old boy spoke to me, and I recorded him. for 8 minutes and 53 seconds. And this is not a short period of time. And he talked to me about Dante. He told me who Dante was. He described his Divine Comedy. He told me that it consists in these 3 regions of Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradise. And when I asked him, but what do we learn when we read the Divine Comedy? He said, we learn to be good. And then he told me, you know, you do not go to Inferno, you do not go to hell unless you commit something very serious, a terrible crime. But it may happen that you go to Purgatory if you make some mistakes in your life. And there you have a chance to reflect and understand what to improve. And then he said, 9 years old, he said, and when you reach paradise, you find out that no one respects you more than God. And you learn that to show your respect to God, you need to respect everyone. So I was really impressed with what Sammy told me that day and thought it was wonderful to share it with you today. And I'd like to also mention very quickly that in 1996, the Divine Comedy was actually staged and performed in front of the founder of this program. And this again shows us how we are walking along a path of educare. So we have said that culture is nourishment, and you may recall with Esther Cris, she used the word refinement. And I would also like to propose again, to share again this wonderful quote by Sathya Sai of 1989, talking about education. He said, the ancient sages felt that it was not enough to develop the human qualities in the child. They envisaged a system of cultural training, refinement for the spiritual development, by which bad tendencies got rid of and good tendencies are inculcated. So this is strictly related to what we will see today. And they intended to turn the outward looking of man towards the cultivation of internal looking. Thus, says Sathya Sai, culture is the cultivation of goodness. Now let's begin with our Divine Comedy. Dante Alighieri, for those of you who may not know it, was an Italian poet, writer, philosopher, politician also, and many revere him as a prophet. He was born in 1265 and died in 1321. And the Divine Comedy is an Italian narrative poem that he wrote between 1300 and 1320. The scholars are not so sure about the last date, but more or less. And it is considered the greatest work of Italian literature and among the greatest works of worldwide literature. And this is proven by the fact that the second most translated book in the world is the Divine Comedy after the Bible. The Divine Comedy, this narrative poem, narrates the experience of the souls after death. It is a journey through the afterlife, and their experience depends on the way they live their lives. And we will see, and many of you know, that it is a journey through 3 regions, the regions of Inferno, hell, Purgatory, and Paradise. Now, on the left of this slide, I chose to put this beautiful manuscript image, just to stress how, since the very beginning, the Divine Comedy became very popular, and it spread in different ways among the people. But as you know, printing, the advent of printing was in 1436, and we are talking about 1320. So it was not possible to print the Divine Comedy yet. What happened is that mostly nuns in convents would prepare these beautiful handwritten versions, these handwritten manuscripts, hand painted, and they would make 20, 30 copies and then use them to make this masterpiece known. And they would be sent to the noble people of the time, of the times, and other people. Now, why the comedy? Why comedy? Dante himself explains this in a letter to one of his most famous patrons, Can Grande della Scala. He says, I do not want to write a Greek tragedy. I want to write about something that may begin with adverse conditions, but it will have a happy ending. And comedy comes from village and oda, and it also comes from the word oda, which means song. And his intention was to make it to write a popular song. He wanted all people to be able to read this Divine Comedy and profit from it. Now, like all masterpieces, the Divine Comedy has many levels of meaning. It has a literal level, which is the story in itself, the state of the souls after death. Then it has a level which is filled with allegories and metaphors and symbols. And Dante uses a lot of analogies also with nature to express his feelings, to express what he sees. And one that I read recently, which I really, really loved very much, is when he is in the purgatory and he is repenting. So of course he bows his head and he says, the wind would more easily uproot an oak tree than I raise my head. He said this to stress the weight of his repentance. Then there is another level, and it is a moral level. Dante intentionally used the Divine Comedy to transmit a set of moral principles. And finally, we have a theological, spiritual level. Theological meaning the study of the nature of God, and spiritual because it moves us forward. It moves the readers towards a new awareness and state of consciousness. I like to refer to the Divine Comedy as a wake-up call in today's terms, and actually Dante himself referred to it as a wake-up call. Again, in his letter to his patron, Can Grande della Scala, he actually writes, the aim of the whole and of the part is to remove those living in this life from a state of spiritual misery and to lead them to a state of salvation and happiness. And then he says, men have an infinite treasure. Those who make use of it share in the friendship of God. So through the Divine Comedy, Dante would like to kindle this infinite treasure. And of course, what is this infinite treasure? It is this inherent beauty, truth, and goodness, which expresses itself in human values, in our humanness. And how does he do this? Through the narrative and all these levels, he provides the keys to activate a process of self-examination. And at the same time, he provides a focus, a clear guiding focus towards an ideal, a higher reality. Because Dante is known also as the father of the Italian language. He invented many words, and mostly he created the basis of the Italian we know today, because during his times, there were many, many dialects in Italy, and he chose one, his own, Florentine, to which he added many words and expressions taken from other dialects. And by so doing, he created the basis for the Italian we know today. And he also invented words. And this is a word he invented, transumanar, which means transumanar, which comes from to transcend humanness. He wanted to help guide people to beyond human experience, to what he referred to as divine transparency. As we said, the Divine Comedy is filled with symbols and allegories. And of course, the symbol that stands out most is the journey, the symbol of the journey itself, the human pilgrimage, the human pilgrim. And we know that when we go on a trip, what happens? We experience new things, we meet new people, we explore. But as this journey, as this traveling through our life becomes deeper and deeper, it turns into a quest for further meaning. Who am I? Where am I going? What am I doing here? And for truth. And when we speak of truth, we mean that truth, which is the highest, which is one without a second, eternal, pure, and never changing. So our journey, the symbol of the journey, takes on a new form, a deeper form. It has stages and steps and levels and becomes a mystical path, an initiatory path. And this path ultimately leads to a new understanding, to deeper meaning. It takes us to our understanding of who we truly are and actually represents our quest. It is the answer to our quest for immortality. And I'd like to just quickly mention that reading Dante, learning more about Dante, I found out that the word death comes from Latin mors. But if I put an A in front of that, it becomes amors, and I am taking it as a negative prefix. So that means absence of death, and that means immortality. But amors is the root of amore, love. So immortality and love have something very much in common, but we will leave this to some other time. And of course, I'd like to link to this Elena's beautiful experience with the Camino of Compostela. Here's an image of the Camino de Compostela, just to stress that the journey is, the Camino is an intrinsic component of our living. We cannot live without exploring, without asking ourselves questions, without walking. Now, the Divine Comedy has an inner thread, a red thread throughout the whole narrative. And it is Dante's own yearning for the light. He has a desire, and we will see how he expresses this throughout the Divine Comedy. It is represented by the symbol of the star. And here too, it's worthwhile to mention that the word star is contained in the word desire. Desire comes from decidus. Sidus is star. The D in front of it, again, is a negative prefix. We take away that star. So this means desire, but we are actually desiring something that is missing. We see this in Dante's, the guiding light. We see this at the very beginning. If you look at the slide on the image on the left, we see Dante at the very beginning of the narrative. He is lost in a dark forest, and he's confused. He doesn't know where to turn, but he is attracted to the light. He has seen the light on the top of a hill, and he knows one thing, that he wants to reach that light. And this light accompanies him throughout the Divine Comedy. And we see this through the three regions. He is about to exit from the first region, Inferno, and he says, where we came forth, and once more saw the stars. His guiding light is represented by the stars. And then at the end of Purgatory, he is about to climb in to paradise, and he says, I was pure and prepared to climb onto the stars. And finally, most of you may have heard this before, at the end of the Divine Comedy, the final words are by the love which moves the sun and the other stars. But this guiding light for Dante is also represented by a woman. And this woman's name is Beatrice. And the name itself gives us a clue because it comes from Italian beatitudine, which means bliss. And the story tells us that Dante met this young lady, Beatrice, when he was a small boy, when he was a child, and he was transfixed by her beauty. But what happened to him was something very, very deep, very profound, and very spiritual. It was not a physical beauty that caught his attention. It was a spiritual beauty. And from that moment onward, she became a guiding light. She represented an ideal for Dante. And this is why she, throughout the Divine Comedy, is a light that is also guiding him towards paradise, which is where she resides. So let's begin our journey with Dante. Now, here he is at the very beginning, lost in a dark forest. And he says, midway on the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost. So what happened to Dante? Dante lost himself in this dark forest. The word straightforward is very clear. He has lost all sense of righteousness. He does not know what is right, what is wrong. He does not know what is true and what is not true, what is false. He does not know what is real and what is unreal. He does not know where to turn. He knows he wants to reach the light that we just saw on the top of the hill, but he doesn't know how. And what is important in these three first lines is that he says, midway upon the journey of our life. He does not say my life. And he says this because he wants to involve the reader immediately at the onset. He wants to say, I am not talking about my story. I am talking about your story, about our story. So Dante is lost, confused. What can he do? He pleads. He pleads for mercy. But before we go into that, he is in a terrible crisis. He is lost, and we know that crisis calls upon one fundamental human value, which is discrimination. We need to learn to find which step to take, which choice to make, and this is an opportunity for us to grow. So what happens in the forest? Dante is, however, blocked because three ferocious animals block his way. And these animals are an important allegory in the Divine Comedy. We will not go into all of the meanings of the animals, but just a few. They definitely represent Dante's own animal traits that are not allowing him to ascend to a higher understanding. And they are a lynx, a lion, and a female wolf. And the lynx represents, in one word, in body consciousness, outer vision, appearance, and body consciousness. And the lion represents irrational power of the ego. And the female wolf, eternal hunger and greed when we do not nourish our soul. So what can Dante do in front of these three ferocious animals that are not allowing him to move? He pleads for mercy. And mercy is also very important throughout the Divine Comedy. And the Latin poet Virgil runs to his rescue. And he becomes Dante's guide and master. Now, Virgil symbolizes human reason. Virgil has a task in the Divine Comedy to help Dante develop his intellect, his faculty of discrimination. And Virgil also represents God's answer to Dante's plea, to God's mercy and God's grace. And this is not by chance that he meets Virgil. This happens actually, Dante describes it very well, through what is called as a triple divine scheme. Three women actually are coming to Dante's rescue, and they are embodied in some way by Virgil. So what does this mean? Just imagine that Dante is lost in the forest, in the dark forest. High above in the heavens, at the top of the heavens, there is the Virgin Mary who looks down, and she sees him. She sees his plight, and she has also heard his plea for mercy. Virgin Mary represents fullness, unity, and love. What does she do? She calls Lucia, who is the saint. A little bit lower, she is the saint that confers right vision. And she tells Lucia to call Beatrice and to tell her that her friend Dante is losing himself in the forest and has asked for help. So Lucia goes to Beatrice, and what does Beatrice do? Beatrice sacrifices herself for a while and goes all the way down to where Virgil is in the limbo and tells him, you must help my friend out of this dark forest. And these three women represent the virtues that counteract, that neutralize, that transform the animal traits. Love, truth, Lucia, right vision, leads Dante beyond body consciousness, and Beatrice, the wisdom of the heart. Now, I'd like to quote Satyasai, a beautiful quote on discrimination. He says, dive deep and you will secure your desire. Remember, the sword of pure love has to be kept in the sheath of wisdom. The senses have to be rigorously controlled by discrimination and detachment, and the twin talents given exclusively to humans. Discrimination instructs you how to choose your avocations and your associates. Discrimination instructs us how to choose what we do and the people we do it with. So our infinite treasure is this capacity to discriminate and to choose, and it helps us transform the vices, these animal traits, into virtues, into divine qualities. So where do we find a diamond? Satyasai has said, dive deep. And here is this beautiful image of a diamond mine. And this is exactly what Dante does. Here is a depiction. Here is an image of the Inferno. Now, as you see, it's this tunnel, and it has what you call 9 circles. He begins, of course, on the top, and he gradually, with his guide, Virgil, walks down the Inferno, the circles of the Inferno. And he begins at the gates of hell, the gates that actually tell him, abandon every hope, you who enter. The gates themselves speak to him. At the beginning, they do not want him to enter because they say, you cannot enter, you are alive. And Virgil has to explain that Dante has received divine permission to embark on this journey. Abandon every hope, you who enter, because hell is described as eternal misery. And this is because the souls do not repent. So the 9 circles of hell, Inferno, represent the region, the souls who have been totally engulfed, totally controlled by their senses, the lower mind and their ego in their lives. Violence, crime, immorality, and evilness. It is a place of lower passions and the enemies of man that live in the mind of man. The violation of law and the kingdom of vice. Here's another beautiful manuscript. And as they go, these are the 9 circles: the limbo, lust, gluttony, greed, anger, violence, fraud, and treachery. And as they go through these 9 circles, they meet many, many, many characters that describe their suffering and their pain, and they explain why they are there in one of those circles, what they did in their lives. And Dante, in this way, becomes, and the reader, more aware of what can happen to us if we do entertain these evil traits. And Virgil instructs him all through Inferno, all through hell. He says, let us not speak of them, but look and move on. He just wants Dante and the reader to become aware. And this is an image of just one of the circles. This is an image of the souls that were hypocrites, and they had to wear, their punishment was to wear these very heavy gowns, which on the outside were made of gold, but on the inside were made of lead. And this is because the experience in the Inferno is based on the law of counterbalance, and the punishment must reflect the nature of the sins. And at the very, very end, in the pit of Inferno, Dante and Virgil meet Lucifer. Lucifer, who is the fallen angel who has actually caused the creation of Inferno, of hell itself. But eventually they come out. So we are now heading towards purgatory. And how does this happen? This is a sentence in the Divine Comedy, which is very famous: freedom is his quest. From here on, Dante walks towards freedom. So now it's worthwhile to give us a quick look at one portion of Dante's universe. As we have seen, he walks down the Inferno, the hell, which is this upper tunnel. They go all the way down the circles, and then they find this tunnel. I'm sorry, I think I said tunnel, I meant funnel. And then they reach this tunnel that connects them to purgatory. And Dante actually says, "My guide and I went into that hidden tunnel, where we came forth and once more saw the stars." So they go downwards, and then this is what happens. There is what we had called before the conversion. This is all tipped over. This turns over, perspective changes completely. And instead of walking downwards, they are now walking upwards. So what is purgatory? Purgatory is this ascending spiral, and it's a process during which the souls purge their sins, also of their guilt. And of course, this process calls upon a lot of human values and qualities, among which forgiveness and patience and humility. And what's also very interesting is when a soul, because this is not eternal misery, here the souls sooner or later will reach paradise, but they have to go through this process. And when a soul reaches paradise, there is the sound of a thunderbolt that Dante describes, and all the souls in purgatory rejoice for that soul who made it. And purgatory, of course, unlike Inferno, which is a very dark and dreary atmosphere filled with clouds and smoke and fire, purgatory is filled with souls that are chanting and singing and praying as they move upwards. Sorry, Mike. So purgatory is a place of purging and release. And as we said, the souls call upon all of the human qualities and virtues. And humility, we will see shortly, is the most important of these qualities, of these virtues. And purgatory, of course, is where the souls reconnect to conscience, become once more aware of their own inner yearning, and recover their loyalty to the heart, to their true, authentic self. And purgatory has a lot of symbolic requisites. As I said, humility is very important. And at the very beginning, Dante is giving a willow reed that he puts around his forehead as a sign of humility. Without humility, you cannot enter purgatory. And at the very entrance of purgatory, Virgil washes Dante's eyes from the dirt and darkness of hell, so he can now see with new eyes. And this is stressed, this is emphasized also by the image on the right, who is the Saint Lucia, who gives new eyesight, and she is facilitating Dante's ascent towards purgatory. And then they reach the door of the tower at the entrance. And this tower has 3 steps to reach. And the steps are a symbol of examination of conscience, admission of one's errors, and repentance. And then Dante is given 2 keys. One is made of silver for wisdom, and one of gold for God's grace. And then you see on the right, the angel with the sword, because the angel welcomes Dante to purgatory, but also engraves 7 P's on Dante's forehead. And P stands for the Italian word peccato, which means sin. And they actually represent the 7 capital sins of pride, greed, anger, envy, lust, gluttony, which is excessive eating, and sloth, which is a word to describe laziness. And as Dante and Virgil walk through purgatory and walk this upward movement through the spiral, they walk along this spiral staircase, the P's disappear as Dante becomes aware, as Dante learns again through the experience of the souls what must be overcome, what must be improved in his own life too. And he also stresses that among the doubts, among the obstacles that the souls find, because it is not just an easy run up to paradise, they're working on themselves, there is the obstacle of doubt, doubting also one's own spiritual experience and distractions. Now we are heading towards paradise, and Dante is asked to bathe himself in 2 rivers before he's able to enter paradise. And the 2 rivers come from the same source, and they represent, one river is to purify any memory he may still have of his sins, and the other one is to recall the memory of his inherent goodness and the good done to others. And then there's a final test before entering paradise, and this is to walk a fire. And of course, this meaning is very, very powerful. It is a final purification and symbolizes a rebirth, spiritual rebirth. And Dante, at the beginning, is very hesitant. Actually, he does not want to walk through that wall of fire until Virgil encourages him and says, look, on the other side of that wall of fire, there is Beatrice. You are reaching the light. So Dante does find the courage to do so. And at that point, Virgil gives what is known as the crowning speech and tells Dante, now your faculties of the intellect and reason have been fully developed, and you are Lord of yourself. So Dante says in his words, remade, I was remade. I had been made again, as new trees are renewed when they bring forth new boughs. I was pure and prepared to climb unto the stars. So finally, here we are in paradise. And who is there to meet him, to greet him? Beatrice. So here we have 2 beautiful images, and on the right is Dante's universe. Just very quickly, if you look in the center of this image, or more or less, you will see the earth, the 2 hemispheres, purgatory and hell, and then the circles of the heavens, and then above that there is that pink portion, which is a rose, and above that the infinity, which opens up. And these are the levels of consciousness as they gradually open more and more. We will see to this right now. So Dante travels through the 7 heavens, the 7 planets, and she says with Dante, of course, with Beatrice, and Beatrice says to him, now I want you to wake up, to unravel yourself from shame and fault. And actually in Italian, of course, it's better. It's the original poet. But it's also interesting because in Italian, it's the opposite. It says, from shame and fault, I want you to unravel so that you will no longer speak or talk like a man who is dreaming. She wants him to wake up. So here is Dante and Beatrice in the heavens. And on the left, you may notice that Dante is actually looking up towards Beatrice, because he stresses that he is able to see the light, this powerful light that becomes gradually more and more intense only by looking through the eyes of Beatrice. And let's remember that she represents his heart wisdom. She represents his own soul. At a certain point of this ascent, Beatrice exits, like Virgil exited before, and Dante meets a saint who is Saint Bernardo at the height of what is called the rose, which is actually that rose, a candid rose. And it is like a flower, it is a rose. And this is where I like to feel it is really the opening of the heart, because that rose, the petals of that rose, irradiates as consciousness expands more and more and more. And right in the middle, you may see at the very top, there is Dio, God. So Saint Bernardo is there to intercede for Dante. Dante is almost there. He is almost ready to meet God, divinity, face to face. And Saint Bernardo is devoted to the Virgin Mary, so he intercedes for Dante, and she grants him this final step. But before he is examined in the three Christian virtues of faith, hope, and love by Saint Peter, Saint Gerolimo, and Saint James. And here I'd like to very briefly reconnect to the praise of love by the Apostle Paul, letters to the Corinthians. Because when I was a child, it seems as if it is Dante himself who is speaking. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. I reasoned as a child. Now that I have become a man, I have put away the child's things. Doesn't it seem as if Dante has gone through this journey of maturity, of spiritual maturity, and now he is ready to see things dimly, he says. Now we see things dimly as if in a mirror, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know the part, then I will know in full, even as I have been fully known. Till then, faith, hope, and charity, love, abide. These three, and the greatest is love. So face to face, Dante meets the guiding light, his guiding light. He becomes one with this guiding light, face to face. And he says, my mind was struck by light that flashed, and with this light received what it had asked. And he ends as he realizes he has become one with this light. He says, but already my desire and my will, they didn't exist anymore. They were being turned like a wheel, all at one speed, by the love which moves the sun and the other stars. So there is this perfect union with the divine. So we are heading towards the end. We have seen that the path of illumination, the divine comedy, is a journey from darkness to light. It is truly a metaphor of our spiritual rebirth. It is truly a pilgrimage within oneself. And through this path, through this journey, we learn to give a name, to identify our inner enemies, and to become aware of them, become aware that we need to transcend them. We need to transform them. We need to find this point of conversion. And as we move forward, we learn, we grow, we are no longer a child, but we mature spiritually. We are ready to meet face to face the light of the divine vision, which at the end is the purest reflection of who we truly are. So this path, this journey, which as said is the spiritual pilgrimage, is the apex of culture. This universal ascent represents the opening of one's heart. And what do we find in our heart? We have said this many times. We find in Dante's words the infinite treasure. And what is this infinite treasure? It is truth. It is the 5 human values. Truth, the point of light in the mind of God, in our spiritual heart. Right action, righteousness. It is loyalty to our most authentic self. And when this truth, this light and our loyalty are combined, are aligned, we are in a state of peace, perfect peace, because there is this unity and this coherence that we also express outwards. And because of this, there is no conflict. And since there is no conflict, there are no barriers. And this means that our love energy can flow freely and with true wisdom in our daily expressions, daily life. And of course, this all means that we become incapable of violating nature and our true nature, because we are aligned with our authentic self. So through this wonderful journey with Dante, our authentic self awakens us to our own inner light. And this is the beauty of culture. Culture calls upon our authentic self and awakens us to its light. And with the words of Dante, we are taken from the human nature, we progress from the human nature to our true divine nature, to transcend humanness towards, as he says, divine transparency. And as Satyasai says, all this, of course, leads us to a life that is an ideal life. So thank you very much for your attention. And I will now ask George to please take over.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear Suzanne. It was wonderful. And I was thinking, while I was traveling with you, this fascinating journey upwards till Paradiso, how universal is this message that reminds the human beings the infinite treasure, as you said very nicely, the infinite treasure which is hidden within our hearts. And all cultures emphasize that the main goal of the human being is to reach this ultimate goal, which is the light. Whatever, we can use many names, different ways to describe, but I think one very powerful image is always the image of light. And so this presentation, I have to thank you, and I think everybody felt this, of our participants, and for this beautiful journey to the light. And already I think some comments have come, thanking you for the wonderful nourishment. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. We can provide a little bit of nourishment very humbly to others when we have also received some. Otherwise, it is impossible.
So I will invite you also. I see that very quickly you wrote some messages. We can take 5 minutes, though it is already 11 o'clock, but never mind. In case that you have any question or you would like to clarify something, please write to the chat, and we'll take 5 minutes, and we can have our break a little later, no problem. Then I'm sure we will enjoy the workshop. We'll have the possibility to discuss and to share thoughts with one another. So if you want to write something, maybe I can ask Suzanne something to you. What was your experience when you first came in touch with this poem, this divine comedy? And of course, it is not just one, because I know that along with Kino, I visited your house, as I said before, and I saw this room where Kino, I was amazed to see all these various publications that he has of the Divine Comedy, how in love he is with this poem. And so I would like to ask you, what was your experience? What have you got from this?
Well, first of all, George, it's been a very, as I said at the beginning, a very, very inspiring experience for me to go deeper into Dante. Because when I did move to Italy, as I said, commenting my little nephew, it is something that you definitely study at school. So since you're very, very young. And actually, it is everywhere in Italy. I wanted to share this before, but actually I didn't. How you can find books that go from very antique manuscripts or books, but you can, and then many different kinds of books, but you can also find Mickey Mouse, you know, that talks to you about Inferno, or you can find Stilton, Geronimo Stilton, these are for children, that says my friend Dante. So, I mean, it is just incredible, the production. My husband and I went once to Ravenna, which is where Dante is buried. And there is a very big Biblioteca Dantesca. It's a library dedicated only to Dante. And we went to visit it, and they told us that they had, this was also a few years ago, so now probably even more, but at the time they had more than 10,000 commentaries only on the Divine Comedy. So you can just imagine the production and the. So what happened is, when I started to go deeper into this 3 years ago, I was just incredibly impressed and inspired by the symbology. What I was really drawn to was the metaphor, the symbology, all of these beautiful symbols, the way that they are explained, that add this meaning to every single step of this path. And that for me was extremely exciting and inspiring. I think that discovering this deep symbology and metaphors, the allegories, was very motivating for me to read it, to get more into it. Though, as said, I am not an authority. I mean, I will continue, definitely.
You said you are not an authority, but I think I will say, out of these 10,000 commentaries, maybe now more, what we saw today, it is really a very enlightening, very simple and to the point commentary. Because we had a chance to go through the Divine Comedy and to analyze and to see the absolute unity with what we discussed during all this course. Because I see, if I would like to summarize what you said and how this Divine Comedy is connected with human values, this inferno is the negative qualities that we have. Many times we have spoken about this. Satya Sai Baba often speaks about these six enemies. Some of them were common because you had a list there. For example, lust, anger, jealousy, greed. So this is what is the real hell. And everybody has these negative qualities. So if we want to go to the purgatory, then we have to clear our heart from all this, to make our hearts clean. How? With the human values. Very nicely. We had some different faces there and some characters, but actually, as you very nicely explained, it was the human values. We had Mother Mary, which is the symbol of love. Then Lucia, which is the light, that means the truth. We had Beatrice, which symbolizes the right contact. So with the human values, we can purify the heart, and then naturally, then we reach the light. So I think this is the simplest and the more authentic commentary. It is not necessary to say too much.
No.
Then to be lost sometimes.
That is very true. That is very, very true. In fact, the scholars, my husband is many times, he becomes a bit frustrated with the scholars, with the commentaries, because he just realizes that they go into the details and into the, why did he put that full stop there? And they lose all the sense of the true beauty and meaning of this beautiful narrative.
Exactly. This often happens with scholars.
Yes,
They
yes.
lose the forest, and then they
Yeah.
take care of so insignificant details.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I think we can keep this beauty and this authentic commentary, I would say. We are very thankful to you.
Thank you very much.
For sharing all this with us, because personally also I've heard, of course, about Divine Comedy, but I never had the chance to read. But during this, and I had the chance also being a member of the team that we prepare these sessions to hear once again by you. So it was, because the repetition is all the time helpful. So I'm very thankful for this. And maybe I would like to read a comment and then to close, to go to the break. Elena says, I'm speechless with such a deep and moving experience you have taken us through, and how amazing are the illustrations. Really, this was always also a piece of art to see your beautiful presentation. The healing of your research to prepare this presentation touches every level of our psyche. It is very helpful, and the connection with the 5 human values is so clarifying. So, and Katerina says the same, completely agree with Elena. The illustrations are so impressive that I have taken pictures to study later on. The explanation was not only nourishing, but enlightening as well. So I think this is enough. And then we'll have the chance to exchange thoughts in the workshop. So let's take a 5 minutes break. Thank you again, dear Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank everyone. It's been a wonderful opportunity for me also to work at this. Thank you.
So welcome back. I'm sure that you enjoyed your discussion. Fundamental principle of Satyasai education is that you teach by your example, not by your words. That's why I think we had a presentation just on this topic. And this was also expressed by Kamel, because he appreciated the energy that was coming from Suzanne when she was presenting, just to present. Because this is this is what is the catalyst that helps the other to get the message. It comes from the heart, and in order to come from the heart, we have to have the experience. Then it comes out. Thank you. I think for all of us, and everybody would like to express how, and we need more time, because this is very important question. What was the milestone in our lives, and how this wake-up call came to all of us? But maybe now it's time to sum up and to close the meeting. I will invite Suzanne to say some concluding words. And keep in mind, maybe you can give also some words as an answer to the question of Kamel. And beside love and peace, and when we discussed this, he described like a greenhouse. We are all very happy and this, but when we go out, why and what can we do to spread among our communities this message of human values and the light? Actually, this is very much connected with the petition that the people in Florence did to their priors. Because they went there and said, please send somebody to explain to us this divine comedy, to spread this divine comedy. So this is something. Here already with Dante, we have an example how we can spread the message of human values. This is what Dante did, because he was a great artist. He wrote this poem to contribute, because this was his need. This was the need of the people of that time. This is of the need of the people of this time. Always we want to spread. So with this, if you can comment a little and then to sum up.
Thank you, George. I'd like to just say 2 things in reply to Kamel. Of course, it's not easy. We know this. It is not easy. I don't know if we really have an answer, but I do know that definitely human values, the 5 human values and local culture is truly fundamental to grasp. Because if we do grasp the values in our local culture, we can find a way to speak to the people in our communities, because this is the culture that they will recognize and understand. And our experience in our open space has exactly been this. We have used, let's say we have honored Dante, and with Dante, through Dante, we have been able to welcome many people who may not even realize that they are searching for this soul, this inner light and nourishment. But when we started to talk about Dante, they found something, they recognized, they were drawn to come back. So, but this is rooted in their culture, in local culture. So it's fundamental to find what we can cultivate in our local culture, with also a higher uplifting it, also with the experience that we have had also with Satyasai's teachings. So we add to that the new teachings. And something else I'd like to just shortly say is that I forgot to mention this, but I feel it's very beautiful. What also happens throughout the Divine Comedy, especially in Hell, Inferno, and Purgatory, is that Dante does become depressed. He actually faints even twice. He becomes depressed and upset because he has to be a witness of so many atrocities and so much difficult in human life. And of course, when we are depressed, what happens? We bow our heads. We can bow for repentance, but also because we are sad. And so Virgil, many times throughout the whole journey, reminds him to raise his head, to reconnect to the light. And this brings me to mind a personal experience I had many years ago in my studio in Italy. And I had a studio where we would make illustrations for children, and children in the neighborhood sometimes would come to visit. And one day I was there, and a little girl of our neighborhood came. She was 8 years old, 7, 9, I don't remember. And we were talking. She came to visit, and I was wearing a small cross at the time. And she asked me, "Why are you wearing that cross?" And for a flash of a second, I thought, oh, what am I going to say to this very small girl so that she understands? And as I thought that, I looked down, and then I said to her, you know, when I am sad and not feeling very good, what do? We look down. And when I look down, I see this symbol, I see this cross. And in this cross, I have everything I believe in, everything I love. And so I immediately am reconnected to what I love, and I raise my head. So I feel that what we can do, among the many things we can do, is to keep our heads high, to raise our heads, to stay connected to the light, and to really know in our heart that that light is one with us, and it is stronger than anything else that we can see around us. So this is what I can share. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. And as I said before, for me to bring together this presentation has been a wonderful opportunity. Thank you again.
It was wonderful for all of us, also, dear Suzanne. And we keep your last words that we all the time raise our heads towards the light. And by doing so, we approach more and more the light. And this is what we're doing together. And we walk together this path, this wonderful path of human values, which takes us to the light. Because the human values are not anything else but a manifestation of this divine light. So our next session will be on the 10th of December, after 2 weeks. And this will be the last session before the Christmas break, when we will have the opportunity again to celebrate the light. And this presentation, this session will be dedicated to the topic, the 5 human values and international education priorities and policies. Again, we'll investigate how we can find the 5 human values in another field of our daily life in already existing education priorities and policies. This is also very important. So we'll have the opportunity to meet again and to share and thoughts on this. Now, we had to close the meeting. It was wonderful. It was really a journey to the lights. With this, I wish you a wonderful weekend, and we meet in 2 weeks. All the best.